What's going on YouTube? It's your boy Rex, back here with another Diablo 4 video. This is going to be my in-game build. This is what I've come up with. We're going to call this build the Dark Magician Unkillable Necro build. So, as you saw in the clips before this I began talking, with this build, you're going to be really powerful, really strong. You're going to be killing monsters pretty easily. You're going to be cruising through them on World Tier 4. You're going to be doing Nightmare Dungeons pretty easily. You're not going to die. You're not going to be able to take any damage basically with this build. This build that I came up with is built specifically so that you can do a hell of amount of damage and you won't die. I've seen a lot of Necro builds. I've seen a lot of Minion builds. I've seen a lot of Bone builds. This build is for you Shadow users out there. This is for you Shadow mages. These are for the people that don't like minions, don't want to summon them, don't want to micromanage them. This is if you want to be a Necromancer that just want to go in solo and do everything yourself. So this is my character Rexor. We're gonna go over the skills. We're gonna go over the Paragon. We're gonna go over the Book of the Dead. We're gonna go over like how to use your abilities in tandem, like what combination of abilities you should be using, what order you should be using them. So let's go over those. So first, what we're gonna start with our skills. The skills we're gonna be using are Bone Prison, Blood Mist, Iron Maiden, Bone Storm, Reap, and Blight. Now let's open up the skill tree. Okay, as you can see, we're going to start off with 2 points into our basic skills, which is going to be Reap. I've experimented with all 4 of these to see which one is best for this build, and the best one is going to be Reap. Um, Decompose is too slow, and it locks you in place. When this build, you want to keep moving. You never want to stop moving with this build. You're just going to constantly be moving. Um, Bone Splinters also locks you in place, and you're going to be in melee range most of the time. And same with Hemorrhage. These are all long range abilities, and you're going to be melee range. So this is the best one in melee range where you're moving and orb walking and clicking and moving. So this is the best one. So you're going to take Reap. You're going to take Enhanced Reap. You just need an extra point. You really don't care about the attack speed. It's nothing really beneficial for you. You're going to come down. You're gonna get 1 point in unliving energy. This is just like an extra point that I needed to put somewhere. Nothing else made sense, so we put it into unliving energy. Right here we have 9 out of 5 blight. Hopefully I find somewhere because I've seen somebody have 13 out of 5 or something. So hopefully we get that because this is gonna be our main one of our main sources of damage is blight. It's not our only source of damage, but it's going to be a huge contributing part to it. So we're going to take blight, and blight just basically lives an area, a puddle on the ground. It basically does damage over time for 6 seconds, and that damage is going to depend on how many points you have into it, what your weapons are, how much shadow damage you have over time, things like that. So you're going to take 1 point into blight. One enhanced blight, which is it slows by 25%, and this is crowd control. So and this is also going to stagger bosses. So you want the enhanced blight, so it's going to start slowing enemies. They're not going to be moved to you as fast. And then we'll take paranormal blight, and this is going to have a 30% chance to immobilize enemies for 1.5 seconds. This is going to stick them in place, and they're not going to be able to move. And then it's going to let you do your full combo and just beat them all down, as you can see in the videos. All right, so we're gonna come down to Blood Mist. This is gonna be our first defensive skill we're gonna get. And unlike a lot of builds, we're taking all 3 of these build abilities. We're taking Blood Mist, we're taking Corpse Explosion, and we're taking Bone Prison. So we're gonna take Blood Mist, and what Blood Mist is gonna do is gonna turn you in vulnerable, or in this game it's called immune. It's gonna reduce your movement speed by 20%, and you're gonna deal damage periodically, and it's gonna heal you as well. And then you're gonna take Enhanced Blood Mist, which overpowered damage reduces cooldown by 2 seconds. And then you're gonna take Ghastly Blood Mist, which leaves a corpse behind every 1 second. And then you're gonna want to take Bone Prison. Bone Prison it basically is just the cage that you're gonna put the enemies in. They can't move out of it. And you're going to take Enhanced Bone Prison. This is really important. Enhanced Bone Prison is going to gain 15 essence plus 5 per enemy trapped. So you get 15 essence, and then if there's 10 enemies trapped in there, there's 50 essence. So you get 65 essence just from trapping, uh, 10 enemies. So it's really good. is really helpful, and this is going to be one of our ways to generate assets, and so this way we don't run out of resource like a lot of jobs. Enemies inside Bone Prison are vulnerable, which is really good. You put them inside, they become vulnerable, you do extra damage to them. And then lastly, we're going to take Corpse Explosion. Um, Basically, anytime you use this ability, you're going to explode a corpse. And as you can see on our hotbar, we actually don't have Corpse Explosion on our hotbar. There's a reason for that. Even though we're going to be maxing out Corpse Explosion, we don't need it on our hotbar because we need other skills. We're going to take Enhanced Corpse Explosion. It's going to increase the radius. And then also, this is the important. Corpse Explosion becomes a darkness skill, and instead of exploding, it releases a Val Miasma of dealing 8 shadow damage over 6 seconds, so this makes it a dot as well. And then we're going to come down here, we're going to take Iron Maiden. Iron Maiden, the reason we're taking Iron Maiden is really because when we hit people with it, it increases damage dealt to enemies. So we're going to take Iron Maiden, and then we're going to take Enhanced Iron Maiden, which makes this is very important. It no longer costs Essences, and you gain 5 Essences for each enemy cursed. So this is really important. Along with Bone Prison, and along with Iron Maiden, these are 2 Essence generations that we're going to have. So we're going to continually generate Essence. And then right here, we're going to take Amplify Damage. So you deal 9% increased damage to cursed enemies, which is really important. So you're generating essence every time Iron Maiden is hit, and also you're doing increased damage to people hit by Iron Maiden. So 9 times out of 10, you're going to start the fight off with Iron Maiden. You're going to start the fight off with Iron Maiden, then you're going to do your damage. We're going to come down here to the passives, and we're going to take Gruesome Mending. While below 50%, you receive 30% more healing from all sources. So this is going to mean your pots, Freedom of Life on kills, and your blood mist. So this is really important. This is going to help heal you up, even if you don't have pots at the time. Let's say right now you're doing a hard nightmare content. This is going to help you. And you're going to take every single passive in the shadow category. This one is really important, Reaper's Pursuit. This is going to increase your movement speed. Reapers have a huge issue with not having movement speed. So anytime you hit people with darkness skills, guess what? Now you have 15% movement speed for 3 seconds. And because you have dots, it's going to be stuck on there constantly. So you're never not going to have this buff, and this is going to allow you to move fast throughout enemies. We're going to say Gloom. When you damage an enemy with darkness, they take 6% increased shadow damage from you and your minions, stacking up to 3 times. So that's 18% increased shadow damage, which is really, really great. Um, Darkness skills has a 15% chance to stun. So this 15% is going back into the slows, going back into the mobilize, and this is going to help stagger bosses more and more. So when you do world bosses, when you do nightmare bosses, or when you do it on the butcher, it's really important that you're staggering. So this is also helping staggering. Then terror. Darkness skills deal 9% bonus damage to enemies who are slowed, and 9% bonus damage to enemies who are stunned or immobilized. These bonuses stack and apply shadow damage dealt to your enemies. So because you're doing constant CC to enemies, terror is always proccing, which is really good. We're gonna come down here. We're gonna take Bone Storm. Basically it's just amount of bones just swirling around you doing damage over time. This is important right here. This is gonna make you so tanky. Your damage reduction is increased by 15% while Bone Storm is active. So 15% damage reduction just flat, just like that. And you're just gonna take reduced damage when this is active. And this is also gonna play into our build and what's gonna make us so tanky. And then right here, your critical strike chance is increased by 20% while Bone Storm is active. So now you're critting more while Bone Storm is active, and you're taking 15% reduced damage, which is fantastic. And then you're going to take Shadow Blight key passive. Shadow damage infects enemies with Shadow Blight for 2 seconds. You and your minions deal 10% bonus damage to enemies with Shadow Blight. Every 10th time an enemy receives shadow damage from you or your minions while affected by Shadow Blight, they take an additional shadow damage. This is just all going to depend, right? And this is 22%. So this is all the abilities we're going to be using, which is really, really good. Now by themselves, these abilities don't really work that well together. They're not that strong. You're going to be incredibly weak. Um, and what really sets these abilities going forward is like your Book of the Dead and your items. So we're going to look at the Book of the Dead. Now, in this build, we're not using any minions. So the Book of the Dead for the Skeletal Warriors we're going to take is Reapers. And then right here, you deal 15% increased shadow damage. You no longer can raise Skeletal Warriors. 15% increased shadow damage just given to you is really amazing. So this is the first one you're going to take. Then for the mages, you go to take Cold Skeleton Mages. You deal 15% increased damage to vulnerable enemies, but you can no longer raise Skeleton Mages, which is amazing because you have Bone Prison. You're always going to be making people vulnerable, and when you do world bosses, the bosses are already vulnerable in anyway, so you're just going to be doing increased damage just to bosses, or if you're playing with a party. For your golems, you're going to take Iron. You want 30% increased critical strike damage. So this is really amazing. So you're going to deal 30% increased critical strike damage, and when Bone Storm is active, you have 20% increased chance for critical strike. So if you get lucky rolls with your stats on your items, you can have potentially like 50% critical chance with like 200% critical strike damage. And then there's a legendary. I don't have it on my build right now, but it's a legendary that allows you to for your sacrifices, which are these to do like 50% more. So you do 80% critical strike damage and like uh 65% of increased damage vulnerable. You can take like if you're not using a two-handed weapon, you can potentially take that on one of your daggers or your wands, and then on your focus you can have something else. So that before we get into the items we're going to be using, that is also a legendary you can work with. Instead of having a two-hander, you can have that, and you can add that so that you just do just way more with your sacrifices. So now let's go over the items. So these items are very crucial to your build. I'm currently still looking for ancestrals to put on my character to make the builds work out more. I haven't found any for these couple like for my feet, head, and accessories. So that's really gonna boost you and bolster you. This build is very in game. This isn't a build that you could pull off in an early game. You can get the legendaries in the mid game, but you're gonna be really weak. I struggled with this build in the mid game. I'm not gonna lie to you. I felt like I wasn't doing damage and I wasn't surviving a lot. And at a point when I start surviving a lot, I wasn't doing damage. So it's like I wasn't doing damage and I couldn't survive. Then I could survive, but I wasn't doing damage. And then eventually, I'm at the point now, as you can see in the video, where I'm just shredding things, surviving. Nothing could pretty much hurt me. You're basically immortal. All right, so let's go through it. We're going to start off with the accessories. So for your amulet, and this is where you need to put things in order to get the bonuses. So with amulets, you get a 50% bonus. So Bone Storm and Blood Wave are Nar Darkness skills. So now your ultimate Bone Storm is now a shadow skill, and they do shadow damage over 2 seconds, which is really important. It's going to transform that into a bone and shadow skill. So now you do bone damage and shadow damage. I mean, you do bone and darkness, as you can read up the top. This one is very important because this goes into your key passive. Each time the Shadow Blight key passive deals damage to an enemy, increases the net Shadow Blight's damage within 10 seconds by 34%. So this is going to be between 20 and 40%, and it's stacking up to 5 times. So 34% 5 times is amazing, and if you get lucky and hit a high roll of 40%, that's amazing. That's 200% increased shadow damage. And then right here, this one is important for your movement speed, and so that you. This is I think the best invulnerability ability in the game. Blood Trail leaves a Blood Mist leaves a trail that lasts for 4 seconds that deals 198 shadow damage per second to enemies who stand in it. Your movement speed is no longer reduced with Blood Mist while Blood Mist is active. So you remember that passive that gives you 15% movement speed? Now when you go on Blood Mist, are you always in that passive because it's leaving shadow damage on the enemies? You also no longer have your movement speed reduced. So you just have 15% increased movement speed while in Blood Mist, and vulnerable, can't take damage, and healing yourself, and just going around enemies, and it's amazing. And you just like it works really well, and this is going to really bolster your build. Then we're gonna come over to the helmet, and what you want to take here is each time that Bone Storm damages an enemy, you gain a barrier equal to 2 to 5% of your base life for 10 seconds. This right here, this legendary, is what's really going to bolster your defenses. So when you're in a pack of mobs, and now when you pop Bone Storm, every mob that it hits, you're getting, if you get lucky, 5% of your base life as a barrier for 10 seconds. So that's each time it damages an enemy. So it's damaging multiple enemies, and you're just gonna have. So right now I have 3,358 max health. I'm gonna get a barrier equal to that constantly if I'm fighting. As long as I'm fighting, that barrier is gonna stay up because I'm constantly hitting enemies, and they're not gonna be able to break through the barrier because you're gonna be building barrier faster than they can do damage because you're hitting like 30 or 20 mobs at any single point. So this is the main way you're gonna survive. And you saw in the video, I was literally just standing in there, and they could not do damage to me. If I wanted to, I could just took my hands off the keyboard, and it would have kept doing. It would have kept me alive, and still doing a lot of damage as well. Now, this is the reason why we don't take Corpse Explosion on our skill bar, even though we max it up. Blood Mist triggers Corpse Explosions on surrounding corpses. When Blood Mist detonates Corpse Explosion, it reduces its cooldown by 5.5 seconds. This is important. So now, anytime you go over enemies with Blood Mist, it's popping that Shadow Miasma, and it's constantly doing damage over time to it, but it's also now a shadow ability and it's constantly proccing that. So this is the way you're gonna use Corpse Explosion, and it's gonna do a lot of damage. It's gonna leave the shadow mist on the ground, so you're just constantly doing damage over time. So this is why we don't take Corpse Explosion on our skill bar, but we max it. And then for your gloves, you're gonna take 100. You're gonna take this ledger. You deal 120% increased damage for 6 seconds after Shadow Blight key passive damages the enemy 10 times. So when you're going against bosses, when you're going to huge passive mobs, when you're going against elite, your Shadow Blight is going to be doing, because you're going to be using your Blight, you're going to be using your Bone Storm, you're going to be using your Blood Mist, you're going to be using Reap. All these shadow damages are going to constantly be building up. It's easy to get those 10 procs. You're just going to be doing damage, increased damage. And then for your pants, now for your pants, this is very subjective for whatever you feel comfortable with. Me personally, I like to take Magical Bubble. Now, while you are strong and you can most usually won't die, there's gonna come a time where maybe you misplay, maybe one of the ballistas shoots you out of nowhere from max range, like you can't see it on your screen. Maybe your ult runs out. Maybe you're just like stuck. Maybe you just get unlucky. The magical bubble will save your life, and this will give you. If you get lucky, you get 5 seconds of immunity, and nothing can hurt you. Within this 5 seconds, that's 5 seconds of time for your blood mist to come back up or your ult to come back up to save you, or for you to wait for other abilities or you to build up essence, and you just run away and wait for your other stuff to come back up. So that's very important, and I think healthy bubble is the best way to go for your pants. Now here's a huge one. Blight defiled for your boots. Blight's defiled area when spun pulls in enemies around the affected area. Now, this is also is I don't know if this is counted as crowd control, but it basically works as a crowd control because what this does is it pulls enemy into the very center of the blight. So even if they're like if you're going against a loot goblin, you hit blight on them, and guess what? It pulls the minion back, and then even if the loot goblin is trying to run away, and he start opening the portal. If you throw blight at it, what it will do, it will stop the animation because it counts as CC and it pulls him back. It pulls him back. So what this is going to do is, this is going to be able to corral all the enemies in one big circle so you can do your damage. And like for some reason, it affects the area bigger than the pool of blight. So people outside of the pool get pulled in as well. So I don't know why it works like that, but it does work like that. So this is very key. And then for your weapon, Bone. So this is where you really not gonna be done. Bone Storm consumes up to 8 corpses to increase its duration by 14.4 seconds. So when you pop Blood Mist plus Bone Storm, you're generating corpses and you're exploding corpses. And so Bone Storm by itself lasts 10 seconds. Then when you get this, you get 24.4 seconds of ultimate of just being invulnerable, being able to do massive amounts of damage as you see. So you're not taking damage, you're doing a bunch of damage, and it lasts for 24 seconds. And then if you have cooldown reductions, for example, this cooldown is 54.77. I think my actual cooldown is maybe like 49 or 50. Then you take away 24 seconds for that, all you got to do is wait 28 seconds now for your next ultimate. So because of how long it lasts, you only have to wait less than 30 seconds for your next ultimate. And if you get more cooldown reduction added onto this, guess what? You're really not your ult is going to be up constantly. So this really works well with the build. Before we get into the Paragon board, I want to talk about some cons of this build, and these are not really huge cons, but it's something to think about. When you are doing this on Nightmare, specifically with Nightmare Dungeons, you may have to wait for your ultimate to come back up before you go to the next room or the next mob. Now you can survive, and like the higher level you are, like I'm level 70. If maybe when you level 100, you'll be able to survive. But at this point in time, at level 70, the build is strong without it, but your survivability is really, really low. So even though you could do damage still without your ultimate, and could with Blood Mist and Blight and the damage over time and the Iron Maiden, and with Bone Prison and the vulnerability, you can still kill mobs just fine. Not as fast, but still relatively fast. Your survivability is really, really low. And I think that's a huge thing for necromancers. They just don't really have a lot of survivability. And without Bone Storm, you just don't have that innate survivability. And I think that on Nightmare Dungeons, especially on higher tiers, like on tier 28, tier 30, everyone should start going up. And I'm on 70, so I'm level 70, so tier 28 is the highest I've done so far. You just won't be able to survive. So I think that you have to wait for Bone Storm to come back up when you're doing Nightmare Dungeons. Unless you're just amazing, you could just iframe everything and dodge everything. So let's get into the Paragon board. Now the Paragon board is a work in progress, obviously because I'm not level 100. But I'll give you a general idea of what you should be doing. And for this Paragon board, you're only taking 3 boards. Everything else is not necessary. There's no reason to. So let's just start down. You're just gonna come down, come up. You can take a screenshot of this. You're gonna come down, come up, come around, and this is the first Paragon. I'm not at level 15 yet, but this is important. For every 5 willpower purchase within range, you deal 5.9 increased shadow damage over time. And then when you hit the bonus requirement, you and your minions deal 10% increased damage to enemies affected by shadow damage. Of course, this is just crazy shadow damage, and you can see right now I have 14.3% increased shadow damage over time, so this works really well with Blight. And then you're going to come up, you're going to take this board, and this board has the legendary node Wither, and this is what you're going to take. So you're going to follow this path, come down, grab Wither, and then your shadow damage over time effects have 5% chance to deal 50% bonus damage each time they deal damage. This is increased by 1%. Multiply and bonus damage increased by 2.5% multiplied for each 50 willpower you have. So the more willpower you have, we had 375. Then whatever 50 is, that's how much more damage you're going to do. And then you're going to come back down, come across, come up. You're going to take these legendary nodes, which is just damage over time for shadow damage. Going to come all the way up, take more shadow damage. You're going to get this glyph right here, which is grants 42% increased bonus to all magic nodes within range. Enemies affected by curse skills take 10% increased damage from you. So when you use Iron Maiden, you're going to be doing increased curse damage. And then all these nodes are going to get affected, and then when you increase this, it's going to expand. So right now you have this is increased shadow damage, and when I finally hit this is going to be more increased shadow damage. And then you're going to come down. You're going to get these shadow damage over times, damage to elites, get all of that. And then you're going to come out, come over to this Paragon board. You're going to want to flip it to this. You're going to come all the way down. You're going to take this increased critical strike damage with bone skills, which is Bone Storm, so your ultimate is going to be doing more damage. And then this one right here, hitting enemies with bone skills increase your damage by 1% and your maximum essence by 3 for 8 seconds. Stacks up to 8% and increased damage and 24 maximum essence, which is really good. Then we're going to come back up, and you're going to take this right here. This is going to increase your essence, so you're going to be popping Blight more often. And then after that, what you're going to do is you're going to come across, grab, I'm not here yet, but what I'm assuming, you're going to come get this bone damage. You're going to come get this bone damage. And then for the glyph sockets, I don't really know what we're going to put there yet, but I'll think about it later, and maybe I'll put up a full level 100 build. But yeah, and then you're gonna level them up, but that's the Paragon. It's a lot of theory crafting. I'll see where I come up with. But yeah, guys, that's the build. That's everything that I've come up with this build. Thank you all for watching this video. I'm gonna put a final clip at the end so you can see. Oh, actually, before we go out, there's another big con. The big con is, for some reason, I don't know if this is a bug. I do not know if this is a bug. But when you're going to get suppressed enemies with a big bubble around them, for some reason, this where is it right here? the Bone Storm game barrier, for some reason, is not working all the time. It works sometimes, but it doesn't work sometimes. So this is the main way you survive. So we're in the you don't, not outside, but when you're inside the bubble, sometimes it's not proccing, and you don't get that benefit, and you just die. So suppress enemies, maybe it's a bug. Hopefully they'll fix it. Sometimes suppressed enemies are just the strongest enemies for you, even if they're not that strong, and you could kill them if they weren't suppressed. For some reason, yeah, they'll destroy you. But other than that, guys, thank you all for watching the video. I love you guys. I hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are. Um, please like, comment, subscribe, do all that good jazz. Rex out.